Welcome to She Became Visible. Thanks for joining me this evening. I think you're going to be really, really impressed with my guest because I am going to be interviewing Jesus. And I don't think he's been on any other podcast. So I feel very, very blessed to have him here. Let me show you once again a picture. And he's going to be my guest today. He sometimes uses the moniker Ryan Josiah, and we will let him use that moniker today. And I'm going to give you a brief introduction by showing you a short from one of his TikToks.
Ryan Josiah, a gay former Mormon, dresses up as gay Jesus every year at the Utah Pride Parade in Salt Lake City.
For some reason, being told that you, just by virtue of being you, are inherently broken, evil even, and that the only guy who can save you from yourself lived a couple thousand years ago is hurtful.
Ryan aims to challenge that stigma and alleviate some of the religious trauma.
That's why everyone at Pride loves gay Jesus.
In 2023, he purchased a $20 Jesus costume from Amazon and wore it to the Pride Parade. For 2024, he commissioned someone to create a custom sparkly gay Jesus costume that he wore for the entire Pride Festival.
It's the coolest experience.
He is now using his costume to fundraise for the Conversion Therapy Survivor Network. While the Mormon Church has said that it does not condone conversion therapy, the church has a long history of demonizing LGBTQ+ people as ungodly, contagious, and harmful to individuals, families, and society.
Jesus was always supposed to represent love, right? Isn't that what Jesus is all about? So to have Jesus show up at this festival that's all about celebrating love, celebrating loving them even, that's healing somehow.
The support has been pouring in. This is awesome. Helping people move forward from trauma is so hard, but so rewarding. I have religious gay friends who were really hurt by their families and churches. Thank you for doing this. My kid and I were so excited to see you again last year, and even said how cool it would be if you dressed up again 2025. Thank you for all that you do. His GoFundMe to hold a booth in the 2025 Utah Pride Festival for ex-Mormons and the Conversion Therapy Survivor Network has reached over $5,500.
So let's bring Ryan on to talk about his experience and also to talk about the fundraising that he's doing.
Oh, what a generous introduction. That was fun to watch.
That was fun to watch. I don't think that you are gay, though. That was incorrect. Isn't that true?
That was incorrect. I didn't think they said this gay former Mormon. Maybe they did. I couldn't tell if it skipped or not. But yeah, that is the term gay Jesus or the title that I've been given. Really, I didn't choose. It's just what people started calling me the moment I put a rainbow on a Jesus costume. So I just kind of became gay Jesus, even though I have a wife and kids and.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because you've been so generous, and one of these days I'm going to get to your brunches that you hold once in a while, which I think is absolutely amazing. Yeah, and how many times you've done it? What, a couple of times your brunches?
We've done brunches every few months for over a year now, a year and a half probably. We try to do it every 2 months. Sometimes we miss if we're not feeling up to it, but yeah, somewhere around there.
That's amazing. And what's the turnout? And tell people why you do this, because you are primarily on TikTok. I'm going to put a link to your TikTok, but you are primarily on TikTok. What kind of turnout do you get for your brunches?
We generally get somewhere around 40 plus or minus. We've had 50 or 60 people just at our house. And so it can get pretty crowded, but we have a basement for the kids to go play in with like this sensory swing hanging from the ceiling. We have our main living area. We have a nice big porch in the back of the house that the previous owners built before we bought the house. And as well as a smallish yard that people can hang out in. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to meet so many people. I meet so many people that I have a hard time remembering them. For example, I commute to work on a scooter just for fun and to save some gas. And so I was scootering the other day, and some just random guy on one of those electric mono wheels, like the electric unicycle type of things that you stand on, just looked over and he says, "Ryan?" I was like, "Hi, how you doing, stranger?" He's like, "Oh, I went to your house once at the brunch." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Yeah.
That's amazing.
Hi,
so he not only knew you from TikTok, but he had been to your home, and you're like, "I don't know you." Hi.
So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, I want you to tell everyone your story. I want you to start from the beginning And then tell us when you decided to start your social media. And was this something that your family had to all agree on? Or, did your wife kind of go like, and what are we doing? And, explain that whole situation.
Yeah. Are you asking the story behind starting my TikTok channel?
Well, starting your TikTok channel, but also I want to really tell the audience, because you have a beautiful musical background. You talk about your family. You talk about the fact that, you leaving the Mormon church has put a little bit of a kink into the relationship with your parents and your siblings. So talk a little bit about that. And then at what point in your awakening did you go, I got to get this out? I have to have a medium to share my feelings. And I decided, or, whatever.
I guess that's a little bit of a background. If you grew up Mormon, you probably knew one of those families in the ward or in the stake that just looked like the Von Trapp family singers type of thing, where they could all just go up to the music stand and just harmonize in 4-part harmony. Don't ask them to throw a football, but they can hold a pitch type of thing. That's my family. And so that's how I grew up, with my dad being being the bishop for a while. My mom was always involved with music stuff, got us involved in music stuff. I started piano lessons when I was 9, and then I did band and choir in junior high and high school. I ended up leaving the church in 2019. So I think I was 32 years old at the time. All of my family was still very active, and to this day they're all still very active. I keep waiting for someone to join me. I have 5 siblings, and It's still just me.
Wow.
So I left in 2019. That was when my parents were serving a mission in Germany, so they weren't even here. We told everyone individually. We went to their house to tell all 5 of my siblings that we were leaving the church, because in my family, it's hard to see where the family stops and the church starts, because it's all just one jumble. And so we knew we had to just be open and honest about it, because we couldn't pretend my family's too real with it. But my parents being in Germany, we couldn't meet with them, so we just did it over Zoom and or Skype, I think, at the time. That was before Zoom, huh? And they were extremely hurt by it. My dad said that it was the worst news that we could possibly get them.
Aww.
And my mom just immediately started crying about losing her eternal family, essentially. It was rough for a while. It took a while to get to the point with my parents where they just accepted that my wife and I were out. We're not coming back. At first they were sending us these articles and things to try to convince us or try to give their point of view as to why we should come back. But they have since let us know that they try to be positive, but essentially they've told us that they've given up on us. And so we've kind of accepted that we are where we are, and have kind of started to move forward with my parents in that sense, because it's a bit of a shallow relationship, but it is a relationship, and we're not kind of at odds with each other, as we've come to accept where each other is at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the experience with leaving and telling my parents. My siblings were fine with it for a while. When we told them, some of them, a couple of them cried then, a couple of them cried later, a couple of them acted like, okay, well, that's just fine. I have one brother who has an in-law who's gay and has a gay spouse, and they went to their wedding and supported them all the way. And so they're just like, we know how it is to support family members who don't live like we live, so that's just fine. How's work? It was that type of thing. So that was refreshing. But yeah, it's been kind of rocky off and on with parents and siblings with those relationships. Right now it's looking better with parents and looking worse with siblings, but we'll see about next month what it looks like then.
When you say looking worse with siblings, does it have anything to do with cousins or children or anything like that? I mean, is there any kind of like, we don't want our children playing with your children type thing?
No, actually, it hasn't been anything like that, thankfully. The wrench in the mix came when actually it was, they would say it was my fault, because I requested, I was wanting to make our family culture more inclusive, more inviting for everyone. One of my siblings had sent out a message saying, hey, we're getting together for our monthly family home evening that we still do, and we're going to talk about General Conference. And I was like, it's been 6 years. Can we just be real about the fact that some of us don't believe in the church, might not want to talk about General Conference? And that just started this huge fight that we're trying to recover from right now, where this is like the defining moment as to whether we can be accepting of differences or whether we're going to dig in our heels and have a hard time going for it. So that's why I say I have no idea what it's going to look like next month. But
where do you fall? Because being only, what are you? So you're 38.
Yeah, 38, almost 39 yet.
Yeah, so you're the age of my youngest child. Oh my God. Anyway, so I'm interviewing all of these. Benjamin Parks, how old are you? Oh, 39. I'm like, really?
Oh, is
really?
he?
I mean, I'm like, come on, But anyway, so where do you fall in your siblings? Where are you in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
I'm a middle child. I'm the third of 6.
Okay, so you have some older and some younger. Did you serve a mission then?
Yes. Yeah, all the boys in my family served missions. I served a mission to England. So it was nice to be foreign, but English speaking. I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Okay. So so your parents are like, we are on the right track. Look at that. And how many kids in your family?
So it was 6 total. So 4 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what I have. 4 boys and 2 girls.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
My first 2 are boys, and then I have 2 girls, and then the youngest 2 boys. It was great for bedrooms because you're 2 in that room, you 2 in that room, and you 2 in this room. So that worked out really well.
Yeah, we all had our buddy. The first 2, the middle 2, and the last 2 were all buddies.
That is the one thing that I will say about the church is we have cousins that are only children, or cousins that were my husband's brothers and sisters that maybe there were only 2 kids and they're 5 years apart. They kind of cling to our kids because they miss that sibling relationship. I love our large family. I would encourage everyone to have at least 4. There's just something about having a lot of kids around that I think there's so many things that you can't teach your children that siblings will teach them. Like if you take my outfit one more time, I'm going to throat punch you, or it's like, well, yes, I am his brother, but I haven't been to jail. So please, just high school life. So I can see where your parents were like shocked, and it definitely threw a wrench into their plan and their look. Yeah. And I love the fact that you still get together for family home evening. So you all must live in pretty close in Utah. Yeah,
we're all in northern Utah except for my parents. When my parents retired, they moved away from the grandkids to St. George.
No, seriously, smart people. Yeah.
So they probably a third of the time now. It used to be more often, but I don't know. Off and on, they do drive up to join the FHE sometimes.
Oh, that's amazing. But if they're not able to drive up, you and your siblings still get together for family meeting once a month?
Yeah, like that's what we did this last Sunday. We all got together at my sister's house and just had hot dogs and played in the backyard, and it was a lot of fun. I actually just posted a video about it the other day because we had a really special moment there, where special to me at least, when I feel very uncomfortable sometimes in these settings, especially when there has been these struggles with my siblings. But then at the end of this gathering on Sunday, the kids started just bouncing around this ball, those cheap inflatable thin balls that you can get at Walmart or Target, and just keeping it up in the air. And one person said, "Hey, we're playing Keepy Uppy," which, if you've ever watched Bluey, that's a reference from the TV show Bluey. Since I wasn't in the circle, I just pulled out my phone and went on Spotify and found the Keepy Uppy song from Bluey and just started playing that song. And everyone all in unison just started singing along and laughing as they're playing with this ball. And it was just this moment of pure joy that just reminded me why I love my family and why I want to fight for these relationships.
Well, and not only that, because I watched that, and it really made me realize that hopefully that also sent the message that we have other things in common. And we have things that draw us together as a family, even if it's not our belief in that particular religion. And so that's beautiful. I love that happened.
Reminds me, we were talking offline here before we started about how sometimes I have to go back and review my own videos to remind myself of what I learned. I actually just did that today with one where I basically took notes on, I forget her name, one of the main writers on the religion page for Salt Lake Tribune, where she talked about the people leaving the church and all these dynamics and statistics. Yes, I believe it was Jenna Reese.
Jenna Reese, yeah.
Yeah, and she said that the families who succeed are the ones who can acknowledge the elephant in the room. Like you don't stay silent about the fact that so and so left the church. It's said out loud. It's acknowledged that we are different, and then they go beyond that to find things in common and things to connect with. The families that struggle the most, and she said the saddest stories that she sees in her research and in her talking about these things with members and ex-members, are the families who either just won't talk about it, like they know so and so left the church, and yet for some reason it's uncomfortable enough that no one brings it up. Or like in our case, you go to the siblings and the parents the one time and say, we're leaving the church, and then no one ever mentions it ever again. And that's been more similar to my family. I've talked about it maybe 3 times with my parents, not at all with any of my siblings. And that's why we struggle, because it's this huge elephant in the room that's causing so much friction, but it's all behind the scenes where you just pretend like everything is fine. And then when something comes up, there's no way to confront it because we haven't kept it out in the open. So if anyone's in a similar situation here, that's the lesson I learned from, I believe it was Janice.
That's the great thing about, in my situation, I've expressed on some of my other podcasts, my children have primarily left the church, except for I have one daughter, but she's very nuanced and very aware of what's going on and listens to all of the podcasts. And, for many of the reasons that even Jana talked about, she finds goodness in the church. It's a great community to raise her 4 children in. And it's fine because she's aware of everything I talk about. And she goes, yeah, I watch that podcast. And she watches Mormon stories and follow some of the people. And so there isn't really, the only tension that I find is they've left the church, but then when I left the church, they're like, oh, really? So you made us go to BYU, but now you've seen the light, and I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. It was the worst thing I ever did as a parent, So I get yelled at for leaving the church when they're like, well, we figured that out a long time ago, girl. What's wrong with you? And I was like, well, so, but we have such a great relationship because we just love each other. We have great memories from vacations, and we find things about that aren't related to the church. So how old are your children?
My oldest is 11, close to 12, which we've been talking about. We just realized the last couple of weeks that she would have been doing baptisms for the dead this year. And so we told her all about what that is. Middle child is 9, and our baby is 3, almost 4 in just a couple of weeks.
So have they had their, experience of going to their cousins' baptisms and feeling left out, or like, I don't get to do any of this? Or have you had to have those discussions?
We have had those discussions as far as baptisms specifically. When we first left the church, we were invited more to things like that. But like the most recent baptism we knew about, but I don't think we were supposed to know about, So it's in that way, it's been getting worse instead of better. So that's why I wanted to improve things. But we have had those conversations more and more with my kids about how we are different. So like, for example, they know how to talk around and with their Mormon cousins versus how they can talk with others who are not Mormon, and they know what to avoid. They can use whatever language they want in our home, as long as it's not against someone. But they know what words not to say around their cousins, even if it's not against someone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, how much better is that setting them up to enter the world? And, and knowing that even though they're growing up in Utah, there's a good possibility they will leave the bubble. They're more trained where this is not going to be a shock to them, or it won't be any kind of a crisis in that case growing up like that. I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. When did this begin to evolve? You have the most beautiful hair. You must have women all the time. They're like, that's not fair. Your hair is so gorgeous. So when did you start growing your hair out? And then this whole, explain the semantic look that you have that is so perfect. It's like, wow, that is better than anything I've seen at Deseret Bookstore, I have to say. You should start modeling for
I'm just a little, especially with my light here that I have, I'm just a little too pasty white to be an actual Jesus actor. But that's what Mormon Jesus is pasty white. So I guess
I was going to say, you're a little bit, you're not quite Swedish enough to do a Deseret Bookstore of veneer, beautiful veneers. We went to Swiss Days again this year, and I always have to take pictures of the booths that have Sven, Jesus. That's what I call him. They're beautiful. I mean, they think they came to Los Angeles from Australia, and within 5 days they were movie stars because they're just all so handsome. But and so I look at Jesus, Mormon Jesus, and I'm like, you could be an actor in 5 minutes if you went to LA. But I have a picture of Jesus in our home in Arizona that was drawn by Walter Rain, and it's beautiful. I actually saw it in the Portland Temple. They have a very large picture of Mary, Martha, and Jesus, and he paints them authentically. So they're dark, and Jesus looks disheveled, and his beard is not neatly trimmed, and he looks very Semitic, and it's like, thank you. And so I immediately went to online and bought one. The only other picture I have of Jesus is another one. I think was it also Walter Rain, that as a baby, he's like a 2-year-old with Joseph in the carpenter thing. Okay. So those are the only pictures I have. But your hair is growing, your beard is growing. When was the first year that you went to the Gay Pride Parade in Utah?
Well, to kind of back up and introduce in asking about the hair and things, as you were talking, I was looking up a photo. Let's see if this will show well.
Oh my gosh.
This is pre-Jesus, Ryan.
Okay, so, that is not Jesus at all. Your hair isn't even curly. It's not even curly.
I had no idea it was until I grew it out.
That's
was the
amazing.
weird part.
Yeah.
It's been about 3 years, probably. It's been 6 years since I left the church and 3-ish years since I started growing out my hair. You can actually see if you go way back. I mean, I have like 800 videos by now, but if you go back to the beginning of when I started posting videos, my hair was just kind of shaggy, and it's been growing out since then. And so I've had 3 long hair haircuts in my whole life. So it's only been that long. But I like to say that other people kind of reclaim their bodily autonomy with piercings and tattoos. And like my wife has these amazing tattoos, like one on her arm that is floral. From a distance, it just looks like floral. But if you look closer, it's floral around a snake is the main feature on her arm. Yes. Kind of as a play on Eve and the snake and that type of thing.
This is my
yeah, very cool. I love it.
all of my tattoos are feminine, divine things. So I love that.
I love it. But my reclaiming has been body hair. So it's just the beard and the long hair. When I first decided to grow out my hair, speaking of family stories here, I told my parents that I decided to grow out my hair because I think it can look really cool with that men can look really neat and look really nice with long hair. And my dad just immediately, sometimes my dad says these things and then you can tell he thinks about it afterwards. And anyway, this is one of those moments that it seemed like he questioned whether he should have said it, but he just immediately said, "Can a man look good in long hair?" And like in that moment, it was solidified in my brain that, okay, now I have to do it.
It's like, watch me.
Yes, exactly. So when I first got my first long hair haircut, I tracked down, or rather my wife tracked down for me, a curly hair specialist. Apparently those exist, people who only cut long curly hair. And this one in particular was this individual who does training sessions as well. So I scheduled, I think it was 2.5 hours. And we used 2 hours of that 2.5 hours for her to cut my hair and then coach me every step of the way with how to do it, because I knew nothing about it. I had been kind of trying to figure it out on my own, and it was not working, because when you do, the beauty industry is so big, you do Google searches and it just does not help, because every product is the best and everyone says that this ingredient is better and that ingredient is worse, and I could not figure it out on my own. And that's how I learned how, is by going to a specialist. And then she was a little too Mormon, because then she had a baby and she retired at the ripe old age of like 24 or something, so she would be home with the baby, which understandable, but she was very Mormon. That was just out of the question of keeping working. So I found a different curly hair specialist, and she just happens to be ex-Mormon, and so it's a little therapy session every time I go get a haircut now, that we can just talk about Mormon stuff.
That's
and
amazing.
fun.
That's so good for people to understand. And I wish more women would actually pay attention to that, because I used to get when we lived in Washington State, I'd get my nails done, and they also did hair at this salon. And I would watch these women come in, and I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. They don't know what they're doing. They're not professional. They just got, let them do your nails. Don't let them do your hair. Because I watch these, everybody got the same pick up, click, pick up, cut. And you'd see these women walking. I'm like, your hair is really thick. You can't do that, or your hair is really curly. You're going to have a different cut, but it's so important. And I'm sure you had to learn about products, and probably never used products before, and your hair. And talk to me about the support for the gay community, and what was the impetus for that. And then the entire, like, I'm going to the gay pride, and I'm going like Jesus. Yeah, tell me that.
It was actually very much related to the hair,
Yeah.
because it was that first year that I actually had legit long hair, and people just immediately started saying, "Oh, you look like Jesus." And so just for fun, I went on Amazon and I bought a $20 cheapy Jesus costume. And we decided to take our kids to the Pride Parade that year. That was only 2 years ago now. It seems like so long ago, only 2 years ago. And I brought along this costume, and I had on a bright orange shirt. And during the parade, I flipped the costume over my bright orange shirt. Like, you can see it peeking out there. And everyone in the parade just went nuts. And everyone just immediately started saying, "Hey, it's gay Jesus! Gay Jesus is here!" And I got so many hugs and high fives, and people coming up to take selfies with me as they were passing by in the parade. And it was just amazing. I did not expect that type of a reaction.
Yeah.
So I posted a couple videos about it. Viral for me. It was like 150,000 views or something.
Wow, and that's a lot.
One of my best friends that I made here on TikTok is Mandy. Her main page is Sacral and Irie, where she does sewing. She's a professional seamstress, makes amazing costumes for these professional ballets and other productions. She reached out to me and said, "May I make you a custom Jesus costume, a Pride sparkly rainbow Jesus costume?"
Oh my
I was like, "May you? Of course you may. I'll pay whatever is necessary for that." So she made it for me. And then our next step is to have a crown of thorns. I've prepaid for it, so we can have it next year for Pride, to have a crown of thorns with dangling rubies as blood drops. And anyway, so she made that for me after Pride 2 years ago. So then I wore it for the first time at Pride last year. I didn't have a spot in the parade or anything. I wasn't really well known as gay Jesus yet. And so I just went to the parade again, and again just got so many pictures, and it kind of became a thing. I went to the festival, just wandered around the festival, and just stepping foot in the festival, people just formed a line in front of me. And so I didn't have to post anything myself. I just went viral because hundreds of people took photos with me as I went over those 2 days. As a result of that attention last year, leading up to Pride, people started reaching out to me this year, such as like that Pink News segment there. I didn't know about that. They just randomly posted that. They'd gone through my videos in the past and put together this thing. So that got even more attention. So then, like, there was the Q Salt Lake magazine, the Queer and Ally magazine in Salt Lake, that reached out to me and asked if they could publish a story about me and have me on the cover. And so I was on the cover of Q Salt Lake in May of 2025, May of this year. What else was there? There was the Church of the Sacred Whale, that it's a legit church. I mean, legally it's a church, but it's kind of imitating the LDS church, of course. Instead of Jesus, it's the Sacred Whale. And so they reached out to me and said, "Hey, could you join us in the parade?" And at that point I had to say, no, I already have a commitment with the Conversion Therapy Survivors Network. And so Sam with the Conversion Therapy Survivors Network had reached out to me as well, and said, "Hey, could you help us get attention?" So I made a fundraising video for that was referenced in that intro on Pink News, that got thousands of dollars. It worked really well and made it possible for them to do everything they wanted at the Pride Festival. And now they've never actually had money to invest in things to be able to help more people. And that's what did it, is just making a video taking advantage of gay Jesus. And so anyway, that's kind of the story and how we got to where we are today. It's been a crazy ride, and it's been a lot of fun. And I have no idea where it's going to go in the future because I've only done it for 2 years, really only one officially. This year was the first year where anybody knew that gay Jesus was going in advance.
I mean, it touches my heart because I think the visual that you give to these people is so loud, much louder than anything that you could say. The idea that Jesus would be at the gay pride parade must touch their hearts so deeply. The idea that Jesus does love me and I am accepted. If that's a belief that they want to have, if they want to believe in a Jesus, and that was very important to them, but they've been shunned by other religions that teach that they are not of value. To see that visually, it makes me emotional because it must be so comforting for them to go, I can see it and I bet it's real. Even if they're hearing something else. So who would have known that people that had gone through conversion therapy would be struggling once they had gotten out of it, that there was a need for even that foundation. So that's amazing that you can, like you say, bring to light just by a visual.
Well, conversion therapy, especially, they like BYU got lots of attention for conversion therapy back when Dallin Oaks was president of BYU in, I believe, the 1970s when they were doing electroshock therapy. Like they would hook up electrodes to your groin area, and whenever there was a gay image on the screen, they'd shock them to. Anyway, it was just so traumatizing. Not everyone survived the ordeal, and so that's hence the name Conversion Therapy Survivors Network. And so that's one of the more extreme examples of this religious trauma that people went through. Less extreme, even with conversion therapy, a less extreme example would simply be to try to pray the gay away. That is still conversion therapy. So many people have had this religious trauma that they have gone through. Whether or not they're religious now, I would venture a guess that the vast majority of people who go crazy about seeing gay Jesus do not believe in God, even do not believe in Jesus, and yet they have some sort of religious damage in their past, religious trauma that they have gone through, that when they see Jesus there's suddenly this image of what religion should be. They know that religion harmed them, and yet here is what religion should be, just loving of everyone and encouraging us to see each other as equal humans, all worthy of love and acceptance, and trying to help each other out. I think, and that's my goal, is to convey that attitude.
Did you and your wife deconstruct at the same time? Did you bring it up first and we'll study this together? Or how did that come about?
No, I was the stubborn one.
Really?
I left the church after she did. And not too long after, but it was roughly like 6.
And what was the thing that turned on her light switch?
It was different for each of us. We had been having individual issues that also converted into marital issues. And so we'd gotten into individual therapy. Each of us had our own therapist. And so we were growing and developing that way separately from each other, but then kind of, coming together to a certain degree as a result of the therapy. She started to see these issues with religion in general and how the Mormon Church in particular treats women and treats the LGBTQIA plus community and treats people of color and all these groups, where essentially she learned empathy in therapy. And then she'd go to church and see a lack of empathy, and it hurt more and more every time she went to church. And I was still just totally all in, full believing. My beliefs had started to evolve a little bit in relation to God and actually Satan as well. I'll get to in just a minute. But I was still just fully believing. And so I suggested to her once, as we were finishing church, about to go home, and she was just saying, this just hurts so much. Why are people so stupid? I just dread coming to church. This moment right now when church is over is the best moment of the week, because I know I have 6 days to not have to worry about anything. But then Thursday evening, I start to get stressed because it's the day before church, and the anxiety builds up all weekend long. Anyway, so I suggested that if God really does know you and really does love you, then God will understand if it is better for you to not go to church. And she just went, what? Is that an option to not go to church?
Isn't that funny?
And so she stopped going to church and she never came back. Getting just a little bit of distance allowed her to deconstruct. And she realized it's toxic for a reason. And so, yeah, she never came back.
That's funny. I had a conversation. Dr. Julie Hanks was offering like a free consultation a couple years ago. And so I called her and I said, I'm having such a hard time. I've stopped going to the temple. I tried becoming a temple worker because I thought that way I can still follow the commandments, but I do not have to listen to this insane ceremony where I'm promising to obey my husband and honoring him and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't do that anymore. So I'll just go be a worker and then I'll be there. I can say I go to the temple every week, but I don't have to listen to this. And then in 2019, I wanted to see the change in ceremony that they had done. So I went back and I came out and I said to my husband, I will never, ever do that again. And I had no plans on leaving the church. I had no historical references. I just knew that this was wrong. But then I started looking back and I started realizing, wait a minute, I remember I stopped reading the Doctrine and Covenants because as I read it, I would go, oh, well, that revelation was convenient. Oh, I just got this. You're supposed to buy me a house, Joseph Knight. I mean, and you're supposed to give me all your money. I just got this revelation, Emma, and I saw that and I was like, I'm just not going to read that book, but I still went to church, so I had all these experiences of just going, oh, that's not right, but whatever. And I just kind of pushed it all aside. It was the Rock in the Hat that I was like, wait, what? That I was like, that picture I have on my wall of Joseph and the plates is a lie. And I was like, I am done. It was that quick. I was done. And like you say, it was just like a click for me. I didn't even have to go through any kind of dark night of the soul, as Anthony Miller talks about. I wasn't like, who am I? I don't know who I am. I'm like, I know who I am and I am out of here. That's interesting that she felt kind of the same way. What was it for you then?
For me, having her leave the church kind of gave me mental permission to be able to ask questions and explore a little bit. That I realized our situation at the time was unique because of, at least I credit it to the therapy that we were both in. Because in therapy, one of the main things that I was working on was empathy as well, being able to see others, especially my wife, for the hard things and the pain that she was going through, and being able to just let her sit in that, to not try to fix it, to acknowledge the part that I played in that, especially, and that type of thing, to be able to see her. So that's what enabled me to be able to suggest that she not go to church, because I was working on what is best for you, what is healthiest for you, because that's what I want, is what is best for you. And so she left the church. I started asking questions, and one of the things that I started asking questions about first was God and Satan. Actually, Satan came first. In therapy, I learned more and more about myself and about psychology and how my brain specifically works. And I started checking off this list of things that I thought were sins or temptations. And like this one thing, oh, that's just human psychology. Oh, this next one, that's just because of childhood trauma. Then I can work on that. And I started checking off this list that it wasn't an actual list, but I essentially ran out of things that were sins or temptations as I realized that I have not been tempted this whole time, or even you could say sinning this whole time. I'm just a human. I'm just a flawed human. And who says we're imperfect to be able to not be in God's presence? We're all just humans. So I realized there is no devil. That was like my first aha moment. And so I thought about God up there, and I'd always kind of wondered, what is it like? Is there this giant chessboard where he has his earbud in, hearing prayers, and he's constantly deciding which pieces to move and which pieces to leave alone, and which pieces to remove from the board because it's your time? And I realized that if there's no devil tempting me, then really, if God is real, he just set up this life, pressed go, and he's just been watching ever since. Because isn't that what this life is all about? To learn how to make choices, the correct choices. So that was my second aha moment, is kind of reinventing my version of God, essentially, is how I would word it now. But I still made it work within the framework of Mormonism. But at the same time, I was reading and learning. I was reading the book Sapiens.
Oh, yes.
Noah von Harari, is that the right word?
Yeah.
The right name,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So Sapiens is one of my all-time favorite books because
Yeah.
it's all about the evolutionary history of humans. And
Yes.
one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle of human evolution actually is religion. Religion played a huge part in our evolution in being able to function as a greater society. You can only individually know so many people. It's like 200 or something like that. And
Right.
after you get above a certain number, you can't really function as a community because you can't
Right.
trust someone who you don't know. Unless you all believe in one magical power. If you all kind of decide we all believe in X, Y, and Z, things that aren't technically real or physical, but we all collectively believe it, then I can trust you. If I meet you, but I don't know you, if we believe in the same God, then I can trust you and we can function as a greater society. And that's one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle with how humankind became what it is. And so learning all these things just started planting these seeds. You could say seeds of doubt. I would say seeds of knowledge of making things actually make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Then the next step in my evolution was discovering CES letter, which is a funny story. I was helping out in the library at church. It wasn't my calling, but the ward librarian couldn't be in the library that week. And so I helped out. We went to church at the Stake Center. And in the Stake Center library, there was just a little, I believe it was a typed note. I don't think it was handwritten. I think it was typed. CESletter.org, just taped to the wall inside the library. And as so many people before have, I saw that and thought, oh, that looks like a church website I've never been to. Let's see what that is. Whoa, that's not a church website.
No.
So I read a little bit, but not much. And then I went home from church. This is after my wife had stopped going to church.
Yeah.
And I said, I discovered this website that is rather interesting. It's cesletter.org. And she just immediately says, oh, yeah, I know that website. It was scrawled on the bathroom stall at the church in Arizona that we attended back then. No. And I opened it up and saw that it was anti-Mormon, and I had closed it, and I haven't read it since. And to this day, she still hasn't read anything from CES Letter.
Interesting.
But I read it, and then I went to Fair Mormon. Now it's just Fair anyway. Yeah. And I went back and forth and ended up spending a lot more time on Fair because it was interesting, because on Fair you can go from topic to topic to topic, click on links here and there, and it revealed to me all these questions that I didn't know that I could have. I'm like, well, that's an interesting one I haven't thought of. And your explanation doesn't make sense. What about this one? Oh, that's interesting too. That explanation doesn't make sense either. And so Fair just kind of, they tried to put together your testimony, but it just piece by piece dismantled my testimony. Yeah. So
it's kind of like the gospel topic essays where you'll hear people say, I just started reading them and all of a sudden I lost my testimony and went, and left the church because I read the gospel topics essay. It's like, that is not what they were supposed to do. That was
and that person, when they say that, they are an honest person, because if they're wanting to make it work, that's what they're for, and that's what they do for many people. But if you are just honest to the core, that'll dismantle your testimony. So that's kind of what Fair did for me.
So when did you start your TikTok channel, and why did you choose TikTok over what else was going on?
I was kind of resistant to TikTok for a while. My wife was on along before I was, and then I eventually started using it just so I could watch the videos that she sent me. Kind of sort of got me hooked to using it, but not crazy amount of use at that point, not like some days are now, but it was as a result of a coworker. I had a coworker who, after I left the church, actually, I guess I kind of skipped a little part. You mentioned in your story about how learning about the rock and the hat kind of broke your shelf. When there was so much on my shelf that I had to give myself permission to learn about Joseph Smith, because that was off limits, because he was so special to me in my testimony. So when I finally allowed myself to say, okay, I have to know, what are people saying and how much truth is there, everything just fell apart immediately. From that point on, I just had this insatiable hunger to learn everything that I felt like I should have known, that was kept from me. Not just because I was a member of the church, but because like this was my whole family history too. Every line of my family history goes back to the pioneers. Every one of them. It's literally in my DNA to be Mormon.
Yeah.
So I just started learning and listening to podcasts. For Mormon Stories, they have, I think there's still the page of like the top popular / important podcast episodes. And it was, I think, the top 25 at the time, and it was constantly morphing just a little bit here and there as John would replace episodes on that list. But I tried to go through that whole list, and that took so many hours because, one episode is like 8 or 10 hours worth of audio. So that took so long, but I had a long commute at that time, so I eventually did it. But my all-time favorite was Lindsay Hansen Park's Year of Polygamy podcast.
Yes, that was amazing.
Yep. That taught me so much. It seems like no matter what it is in the church, it comes back to polygamy somehow.
It really does.
Learning the history of that, it was like learning the history of what makes the Mormon church the Mormon church.
That's so true. I enjoyed that as well. And for me, that was a lot of the other things that cemented my feelings were, House of Females, I read when I found out the truth behind how the Relief Society worked, and then what happened to it when they got to Salt Lake, and how Brigham Young was so angry with Emma and blamed her for Joseph Smith's death and canceled Relief Society until he needed it. Yeah. That was when I was just like, it's like, no. The treatment of women, and it's funny because we took the grandkids to the heritage thing, and they show the farm, and they show, and the kids can go out and they can hoe and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, if I remember from the House of Females, that's where they sent the wives that they didn't like. It's like you will go live at the farm. That existed. Yeah, and it's like they didn't say that when we went through. That wasn't part of the story. So, no. Yeah. I would encourage people to learn about church history at a certain site before going there. Like even St. George, I went to the Jacob Hamblin home. Before I went there, I learned about Jacob Hamblin and his several wives, and found out that one of his wives was kind of like Joseph Smith's foster daughters that became his plural wives. He had one of those, but she was a Native American, and she ended up, I don't remember the details anymore, like leaving him with her kid or something. It was a sticky situation, but going through the tour of the Jacob Hamlin home, they never mentioned her. And so I piped up at the end and I was like, what about this one? And they kind of breezed over and tried to not talk about it, and then moved on. And no matter where you go, there are stories like that they will not tell you. The poor 70-year-old missionaries, they don't even know the history. They just read what's been given to them to give in their thing. And you'll say something like, oh yes, Brigham. When we went there too, we were going to the Brigham Young's house, and they tell the story of when they were crossing the plains, and Brigham Young went back and helped the family. And, and I'm like, I don't think that's true. I don't think that happened. Somebody else had asked a question too, and she brushed it off, but they must go home from those things going, I don't know what these people are asking. That's obviously not true, but So you started TikTok. You really use it. You use it as an information. I mean, your TikTok is very informative, and it kind of follows what's currently going on in the Mormon church. And like, for example, right now, there is still, and this has been going on for years, the Heber Valley Temple, the temple that they're trying to build, and that's in Utah. And I mean, you can imagine what Fairview, Texas is going through, but this is even in Utah where there are temples literally. I mean, I could look around my condo here and Draper Temple's right there. There's probably 3 others I can see. And explain a little bit about even if we just consolidate it to the Heber Valley Temple, what's going on. It's just amazing what you were saying, the amount of authority, money, power that's involved in this little building. The Heber Valley Temple, in my opinion, has been the most controversial temple that Russell Nelson has announced, and he's announced a lot of them. And when I say that, people say, what about the Fairview, Texas temple? But that was just about the height. It was really loud and really angry and really ugly, but it was just the height. And this one, they have argued about the height. And they've also argued about traffic. They've argued about the stars. The church went to Wasatch County. It's not
not in Heber City. That's why it's the Heber Valley. So it's some of the county jurisdiction instead of the city. So they went to Wasatch County and said, your dark skies laws say that we're not even allowed to point lights upward at all. And we want to light up our temple because we don't care about those stars. So they got Wasatch County to change the law in their favor. And that vote from the county level was unanimous in favor of changing the law for the church, just for this temple. And then there were fights about water rights, about being able to pump water out from underneath the temple because it sits in a floodplain. And so if they just built this massive building in a floodplain, it would sink because there's an aquifer underneath them. And it was just, from what I read in the church's study on it, I believe it's just 3 feet underneath the baptismal font is where the water starts. So they had to get rid of that water.
Yes.
And so the church's own study found that they would have, I want to say it was somewhere around, have to pump out 750 gallons of water a minute initially. And then going forward, like long term from here on until forever, until something changes, it's between 150 and 250 gallons of water every single minute of every single day to keep that temple from sinking into that valley. And with all these controversies with the community saying, this is a beautiful, lush green valley, and you will not be able to go anywhere in this valley and not see this temple because it's stark white. They were yelling about the law that was changed that they didn't want changed. They're yelling about the water and how, like, what is this going to do to the local ecosystem to drain the aquifer?
Yeah,
right. And that wasn't answered in the church's study. Nobody knows, nobody cares. And even with all of this going on, when it came time for a vote, again at the county level, the county council voted unanimously approving the construction of this temple. And that's when I first made a video saying, what is going on here? Because this shouldn't be unanimous. This is a huge fight. I mean, I know it's
there might be
Utah.
a quorum idea or something, but unanimous is a little fishy.
It was weird. So I did some digging, and there were articles written at the time saying at the county council meeting, 4 of the 7 county council members admitted that they were LDS, but thought that shouldn't be an issue. Don't bring it up. We're just voting based on blah, blah, blah. It shouldn't matter that we attend these temples and that we make covenants to the God that we worship to always obey his commandments. They thought that shouldn't be an issue. And the other 3 members didn't say anything about whether they're Mormon or not. But in digging around, every single one of them at least used to be. Of course, it's hard to say whether they are active or whether they are inactive or ex-Mormon, but they all had a history of being Mormon. One in particular was at the breaking ground ceremony for the Heber Valley Temple. Prior to this vote, he was in the line with a shovel next to, his wife was next to President Nelson. There was Nelson and I think it was his wife. It was someone in between him and President Nelson. He was in the line, in the pictures, shoveling dirt for that temple. At the county council meeting, he didn't say a thing about being Mormon. He just left. He just stayed silent about it and voted yes. It was like, this is so wrong. And he also is one of the higher ups for the Heber Valley Railroad. Like, he has financial incentive to get more people in the valley. He didn't mention that either. So it's just everything about it. It just has been blowing my mind. Like, why is this allowed? And then there is a lawsuit where the community next door is the Red Ledges community. It's a wealthy community. It's where Dieter Uchtdorf's second home is. I discovered in my research. You can
Interesting.
Public records. You can look it up yourself. But 5 other members of the community sued the church, filed this lawsuit, and they lost. But it seemed like such an easy win for the church. And so I looked it up and found out that the judge over that case graduated from BYU's law school. So everyone involved in this is LDS. It's just been really, really frustrating for so many people. I've gotten so many comments and messages from people who live in the valley up there in Heber City or the surrounding areas. And everyone is just fuming mad about this because it seems like there is no way have an honest conversation with the church about what should or could be done. The church just has this religious freedom flag, and they just use their their power and their size and their lawyers, and the fact that we give way too much leeway to religions in the United States because of
Yeah.
religious freedom, and
Yeah.
just trample on everyone's rights, and they don't care. They want their temple, and that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
So yeah, that has been.
Well, and so they haven't been able to break ground yet because of all of the lawsuits still, or have they started actually?
They broke ground officially in, I think, 2021, or was that when it was announced? It was in 2021 that this drama all started.
Right.
But the moment they broke ground is when everything started falling apart for the church initially, with the dark skies fight and the water fight and everything. And so construction stopped. It didn't actually start. All they did is have the breaking ground ceremony, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
But they finally started construction just a few weeks ago. It just started. There are trucks and bulldozers, and the people there in the valley are just so disappointed after all the work, all the fights, to just lose everything. To the church is just getting their way with everything, and there goes this beautiful. I mean, the valley is still green and beautiful, but there is no missing that temple. Whether you're Mormon or not, it's going to be the valley of that temple, instead of, like, I've gone camping there and I compared it to the Garden of Eden, and it's no longer going to be that. It's going to be the temple and the valley surrounding it.
I remember when I listened to Tim Kosnoff and he said the only place he doesn't bring lawsuits to is Utah. I could be verbalizing that incorrectly, but basically he just said, I can fight lawsuits against the sex offender, the Boy Scouts, all of that. I can fight that everywhere else but Utah. And he can't find lawyers to collaborate with in Utah because it's another one of those, I'm not going to lose my business or my position in the church to join you in this lawsuit, even though I agree with you. And so it is frightening. And it's funny because, as a believing member, when I would hear people say, oh, I'm not going to vote for Romney because he'll just listen to the church. And I'd go, no, he wouldn't. And, but I didn't vote for him because he had offshore accounts and he was a hedge fund guy, a private equity guy that completely ruined people's businesses. And I was like, that's not very honest. And I'm not going to vote for you because he just rubbed me the wrong way. But I never thought about that, and because I thought, no, that can't be true. And then the more I saw, you pick up all these different things. And I remember the one that they podcast where they showed Senator Smith from Oregon in front of the 12 at one of their Thursday meetings. And he was saying, oh, it's been so long since I've been here and I've missed getting counsel from you. And it's like, you are a senator from Oregon. Why are you getting counsel from the church? And so then it hits you. It's like, oh, the reason why they never wanted a Catholic as a president of the United States, because they thought he would follow the Catholic, the Pope. Yeah. And it's like, yes, but Mormons will. You can trust that they will. So
it's not just religious beliefs. It's a covenant in the holiest place that they have.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
So true. Well, Ryan, this has been amazing. I've enjoyed it so much. And like I said, I'm going to put a link to your TikToks because they are just so fun to watch. And I have to say, are you out in the car during your lunch hour, or because it seems like most of them are in your car for some reason.
I do most of it. I wouldn't say at work, but adjacent to work, because I am just on a salary. I don't clock in or out. And so when I don't have anything going on, I'm researching for TikToks. And then I go out into my car or somewhere nearby just to sit out in the sunshine and enjoy some fresh air while I have a few minutes and record a video. So that's how I do it.
And that's one of the reasons why I love your TikToks, is because it's very informative. It's not just someone's fun, or you're not selling items on TikTok Shop. And so it's really a learning experience. Your TikToks are very informative. So I really appreciate
that. That's the goal, because I guess we didn't quite cover that part of my story, but I started TikTok in order to share what I was learning in this insatiable hunger period of me, with the Year of Polygamy podcast. And that's what started it, is talking about polygamy and everything that I was learning. So I'm glad it's helpful and appreciated, because that's what makes me happy. If you know anything about Enneagram personalities, I'm an Enneagram personality type 8, and type 8s thrive with helping other people and feeling like you're making the world a better place and making a good impact in the world. So
I haven't heard Enneagrams talked about for a long time. I remember a couple of years ago that was really big, and I think I figured out I was a 3 or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but yeah. And I think my husband is a 4. What's the one that just loves doing charity work? Loving and giving, and the more he could help people,
Yeah.
the happier he is. And I'm kind of like, could you
Yeah.
stop that, please? We're, it's like, why are you running across the street to help that old lady? For Pete's
Yeah.
sake.
We're having dinner. Come on.
That's right. Doggone it. Anyway. Well, thanks for
Yeah.
joining me. I
Yeah.
just
Thanks for
can't,
the invitation.
yeah, it was so fun. All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk later, I'm sure.
All right. Sounds good. You have a good night.
You too. Oh my gosh. Again, I'm going to put a link and you've got to find Ryan. And seriously, go back to the beginning. And it's kind of funny because I do remember watching him a couple of years ago and his hair was a lot shorter. And so you can see the beautiful progression of his gorgeous hair that he's growing out. So yeah, go back and watch. And if you are really curious about little tidbits, and that's a great thing about Ryan's TikToks, is they're just little tidbits, little 10-minute snippets of information that might just spark something or it might answer a question that you have. So you don't have to listen to an 8-hour. I love John DeLynn always calls them long form. I'm like, no, that's Ken Burns documentary form is what is the difference there. So sometimes we don't have 3 hours. We just want a little bit of information. And that's what Ryan offers. So I was really glad to have him on our show. So join me again in a couple of days on one of my other podcasts. On Friday, we're going to be talking about fitness because it is Fitness Friday. And so we are going to try to avoid all things Mormon. And we're going to talk about, I don't know, protein or something just as interesting. All right. So thanks for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe and push the notification button. If it's something that you're not interested in, you can definitely scroll through, but it might be like, oh, I've always wanted to know more about that. So if you push the notification button, you can make that choice. And share and subscribe is the only thing I ask of you. So thanks for joining me, and we will meet up again next week. Bye-bye.